Well, praise the Lord. Happy Wednesday. Thank you for joining the Vibrant City, uh, Vibrant Bible Study tonight. We are we are picking back up where we left off last week, and I hope you've had the opportunity to kind of uh, get into your devotional and read the history of what's going on here with uh, Judah, the the scepter given to Judah, right? But anyway, I hope you've had a wonderful week. I hope your hump day, as they say, is you can you can see the weekend coming. Uh, and I just thank God that the winds of change is coming. It's not as hot as it was last week, but praise the Lord, Sister Felicia. Um, not as hot as it was last week, and I am really thanking God. I don't know if you all remember. No, I think I was talking about this at church. I was wishing that we would have gotten that storm. And who wishes for a storm? But I'm ready for the weather to change, for the winds of change. So God bless you tonight, those of you who are on with us. Tag somebody and tell them, hey, the Vibrant City Church is on Vibrant Bible Study. So We're going to get right into it. These lessons are long, as I've alluded to before in the past, and um, we just have it made up in our minds that if it takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, three times or more to finish a lesson, we'll do that. It's kind of left up to the teacher. But tonight, as I was finishing up on this lesson, I realized I was going so deep off in the history. I'm just like, I don't know if we're going to get uh, through this lesson. So we'll get where we'll get there. We'll get somewhere tonight. All right. So before we get started, we're just going to have a word of prayer. And so just remember our world as a whole. Remember your neighbors, your friends, your family, people you don't care for so much. Uh, Pray for you. Pray for me that we will uh, care like Christ cares, that He loves. And so, Father, tonight we just thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your mercy. We thank you for your generosity. We thank you for another day that you have just loaded us with benefits. We thank you, God. We thank you for dumping benefits, benefits upon us, God. We couldn't make it without you. And so we just thank you today, God. We ask that you would just bless us on this vibrant Bible study tonight, that we will just in the midst of learning, that we would just have a good time in doing that. And God, we just thank you. We ask that you would bless leaders everywhere, pastors, leaders, dignitaries, teachers, anyone in leadership positions. God, I pray that you would just bless them and give them the ability, give us the ability to lead as you would lead, to um, just be good stewards over what you have put in our care. And so, God, I thank you tonight, and I bless you. And I pray that you bless every family that is represented on here tonight. All right. So here we go. So last week, so I'm going to summarize a little bit of what took place last week. Okay. And so our topic was the scepter given to Judah. The scepter given to Judah. So I'm going to bring you up to speed a little bit. Um, if anybody wants to type into the chats what you think, or what you know the significance of a scepter is, go ahead and do that. We talked a little bit about it last week, but you can also look it up right quick and see what the scepter means. But if you want, just go ahead and type a few things into the chat. We're not going to reread the scriptures tonight, but I will give you the devotional readings again, to where if you want to finish it up or get started in reading this great history, you can do so. So it's found in Numbers 24, that's chapter 24, verses 2 through 9, then verses 15 through 17. The background scriptures is found in Genesis 35, 22 through 26, then chapter 38, 12 through 19, verses 24 through 26, and chapter 49, verses 8 through 12. All right. So the lesson aim, remember its aim was to familiarize you with the structure of Jacob's family. Jacob was the grandson of Abraham. He had 12 sons, and those 12 sons had four mothers between them. There was Leah, there was Rachel, and then their two handmaidens was Bilhah and Zilpah. And the names of those sons were Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, and Naphtali. We discussed about God's exceptional choice, his exceptional choice in calling God's family, in calling Abraham's family. It was an exceptional choice. We learned that God, in his infinite wisdom, went against traditional rule of thumb, so to speak, in choosing the next king or the next person in leadership. He went against all tradition. Um, and we defined exceptional, remember, as being unusual. Somebody type in the chat, unusual, not typical. Anybody feel like that you just the unusual choice, that you know what, God just chose you. People, like I say, can write you off, never thought you would amount to anything. But God in his infinite wisdom did something just was not typical. It's unusual. So here we are. We learned that last week, Reuben, although he was Jacob's oldest son, he would not become king nor be given power or and sovereignty, even though traditionally he was next in line to inherit that position. Now, God had promised Abraham that he would be the father of many nations and that kings would come from his lineage. But that would be according to who God would choose. All right. Remember, Benjamin was Jacob's favorite son. But God would not allow favoritism and nepotism. You know, favoritism and nepotism destroys a whole bunch of structures: family structure, church structure, family and nepotism. All right. Well, that wouldn't be the deciding factor for God's choice in this case. Instead, Judah would be given the scepter, power, and sovereignty. Judah, we know Judah means praise. So this is who God would choose. He wasn't the oldest and he wasn't the favorite. I don't know where he fit in the lineage, but he was not the typical choice. All right. So I don't know. Well, I do know. We have in the past few days witnessed royalty and the order of the crown. I don't know how many of you have been watching the news, but it's on everywhere. On your phones, everywhere. And I brought up last week about Queen Elizabeth, and a few days later she passed away. So anyway, we have been witnessing the order of the crown since her passing. The royal scepter has been passed down to her eldest son, King Charles. That's the way it goes. That's the way it went. Um, they didn't have to go to court about it. They had to fight about it. It was strategically planned and strategically designed that King Charles is the next one in line. But she did put some stipulations on it before she died. She only gave him 7 years to reign. See, already 73, you know. So anyway, and I believe she's thinking of probably the younger ones, maybe with just change. I don't know, but she was wise. He begins his reign where she left off at. Okay. And he is the head of state. He's the head of the military. He's the head of the royal order. He's the head. Long live the king is what they're saying now. That's the honor that they're giving to him. Long live the king. All right. So anybody want to type in the chat anything fascinating or not so fascinating about the events surrounding Queen Elizabeth's 70th year, 70 years of reign, or the pomp and circumstance surrounding her death? Anybody want to just type anything in the chats that is fascinating to you in regards to her life or even her death? She began reigning when she was about 25 years old, I believe. Her father died, her uncle died. It was the father, okay, passed it on to her. And she is the longest reigning monarch in Great Britain history. She was a remarkable head of state, but not everyone or every country share those same sentiments. Somebody said, "Wow, I didn't know she only get." Yeah, she gave him 7 years till he's 80. I think he's 73 now. Mm-hmm. So you remember, I don't know if you heard or saw that she was doing a lot of things just prior to her death. She was making a lot of decisions before her death that would stand after her death, and she also put in position the head of state. I don't know the woman's name, but she had just made her the head of state. So anyway, yes, she leaves an undeniable legacy of power, prestige, leadership, and an ability to be named the longest living, as I said, reigning queen of Great Britain. She was loved. She was loved, um, so loved that people are willing to wait 30 hours or even more just to be able to get into where she is, lying in state where they could just walk past her coffin. 30 hours or more. She's got history. She's got history. And it doesn't mean that everything was perfect, because it wasn't perfect, but they say she lived above reproach. And so people are willing to wait that long to go in and see her. And I even heard one of the news commentators saying that the minute that people heard she was dead, people got on the plane, even from America and different parts of the country, just to go over to London to be a part of this, be a part of this history. Okay. Also, her coffin. This what got me today. Her coffin. I heard one of the commentators say it was about a half a ton. Well, I know a ton is 1,000 pounds. So I've been looking up things, and they said that it's about 550 pounds, and then up to 700 pounds because there's so many other um, things attached to it, like brass handles and the and along with the crown on top of all of that. It's anywhere up to 700 pounds, and those men are carrying her coffin um, in honor of her. So she's not only mourned, but she is also celebrated. So with that in mind, we're talking about royalty in Judah's family, the Lord calling um, Judah. Okay, so now we get to part two of our lesson, which is Judah's humbling. Now, as with me, I kind of like to get off into history. I get to start reading, and it just takes me a minute to come out of it. And so, right here, if you have your Sunday school books, I know everybody don't have a Sunday school book, but the Vibrant City Church, you have a Sunday school book or commentary, and it's found on page 37. I'll be bouncing around, but it's Judah's humbling. Okay, humble, the definition for humble, and I got this out of just off an online dictionary. If anybody else want to give me a definition of it, you can. It says having or showing a modest or low estimate of one's own importance. Have you ever seen somebody, as they say, the old saying is where somebody had to eat humble pie, where they had to come off their high horse because of something happened. But when I think about being humbled, I think about getting to the place. I'm talking about the spiritual part of it. When you're getting to the place where you really don't care about being humiliated, you care about repentance, saying, you know what, I made a mistake, and I really don't care how I look. It's about how I am or how I look to Christ. So anyway, that humbleness of just getting to that point where it brings you to uh, repentance. All right, so a little history that you can find in Genesis 38. All right, so Judah married a Canaanite woman. Okay, and her name was Shua. And together they had 3 sons. The eldest son was Er. The second was Onan, and the third was Shelah. Okay, so Judah chose for his firstborn son, a wife. Now he's got power to do that. That he chose the wife for her, whether she liked him or not. He chose her, okay? And he chose Tamar. I know somebody wants to. We ain't talking about Tamar Braxton, but I'm sure she got a name from there. Tamar. He chose Tamar. Okay, so however, the Bible says that acted wickedly in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. So the Lord killed him. Now, I don't know, as the young people say, I don't know what type of foolery he got into, but whatever the case, it was enough for God to take him out. Okay, so he was wiped off the scene. And after that, Judah gave directives to his second son, Onan, to marry Tamar and to have a child by her, which would symbolically be the heir to the first son, Now, this is the way it went. Now, according to the IVP Bible background commentary of the Old Testament. As it were in Levirate customs, and I'm reading directly, Levirate customs and marriages. If a man died prematurely before having an heir, the dead man's brother was to marry his sister-in-law so that the brother's name could be passed on to the child. So Onan history says, got greedy and started entertaining the thought. He started entertaining the thought that his portion of the inheritance would be decreased now because he would have to share the wealth with the child that was really his, but by law was his brother's. And in all actuality, this child would get more than him because his brother was the oldest. If you understand that, okay? So he was to have a child, and that child was to symbolically be his brother's heir. And so that heir was to receive an inheritance, but Onan was going to have to share it with him. And so then let's find out what happened. He got greedy. He didn't want that. So Onan took matters into his own hands. And when he had sex with Tamar, instead of enjoying the 3-minute thrill and impregnating her, the Bible says that he spilled it on the ground. So in other words, he pulled out of Tamar prematurely, I'm just trying to break it down, and wasted the sperm on the ground. And guess what? Unlike his brother the Bible doesn't tell us what kind of foolery did, but the Lord killed him. But it does let us know what Onan did. And Onan prematurely pulled out, wasted the seed on the ground. And the Bible says, and this thing he did displeased the Lord, and the Lord slew him also, took him out also. Okay? So look, I would rather have a decrease in wealth rather than get nothing at all. It wasn't like he wasn't going to have anything. I mean, my God, Jacob was wealthy. Not only that, he was a part of Abraham's lineage. So they were wealthy. So to share in the wealth, just to have a share, I would take it. What about you? I would take the share. But instead, he got nothing. And instead, his actions caused his future progeny to be completely destroyed. Caused his future descendants, any descendants that he would have, they were all destroyed because of his actions. All right. What y'all think so far? All right, I'm trying to make sure I got my papers right. Okay, so he was completely destroyed. So now we have 2 dead sons. Tamar has 2 dead sons. And I begin to think, like, I don't know if anybody heard, Cardi B said this a year or so ago, and every now and then I think about it. She said, look, God about me. I'm thinking, I say, Tamar might have been thinking the same thing. Look, God don't play about me. So we got 2 men that are dead because they wouldn't do what they were supposed to do, what the law required of them to do. So now Judah has 2 sons down. Now, according to the Levirate custom of marrying and the law concerning a widow, young widows were soon remarried as soon as possible after the mourning period. So they didn't get to stay widows long, because according to that law, they needed to marry the next brother. If there was a brother living, they need to marry that next one so that they could have an heir. All right. And since widows had no inheritance rights, if you were a widow, you had no inheritance right. If you didn't have any children, you had nobody to take care of you. You had nobody to look after your well-being. You had no rights as a widow. They were given special provision, though, under the law, and that was to glean in the fields. Read about Ruth. Remember Ruth? She was a widow. She was able to glean in the fields, and that was a way to have provision for them. And also, the law protected them from being oppressed. Now, Judah sends Tamar back to live with her father. He is still very much in control of her life, even though Tamar is under her father's roof. And the Bible says that Judah told Tamar to remain a widow at your father's house till Shelah, my son, be grown. Till Shelah, my son, be grown. For he said, lest peradventure he die also, as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. Now, I'm looking at this and reading this and seeing how that Judah had control, he had power. He sent her home to live with her father and to wait until the last son came of age so that he could marry her. Now, I don't know how long that was going to take. I didn't see anywhere how old Shelah was at the time. But just think about that. And the Bible doesn't give into what was going on with Tamar. We just kind of have to envision things that possibly were happening. They were human. She was human, just like you and I. So the plan for Tamar was to stay widowed. I got to thinking was stay widowed, stay depressed, stay alone, stay heartbroken, stay unavailable, stay marginalized, devastated, shortchanged, hidden, and etc. until Judah became of age, until Shelah became old enough to marry her. And I say, come on now. Yeah, they had provision for the widows, but really, when harvest season came, Tamar could go to the fields and to glean. She could glean whatever was left over. She could make a meal for herself. She could make sure she ate. Now, that was a life-changing situation for Ruth. That was Boaz. She ran into a Boaz. But Tamar, it wasn't no Boaz in the field. She was trying to wait for Shelah. That was the thing. She was going to wait for him. Okay. Now, she's in a fix. She has no inheritance. She has no heir. She has no husband. And who knows if this baby son won't follow in his brother's footsteps? Who knows? Her future was grim. Now, I don't know, like I said, how long she had to wait for this kid to come of age. But in the meantime, Tamar guess what? She's getting older. She's getting older. Now, as the years passed, Judah did not follow through with the laws in place. He no doubt started using his power to work against the Levirate laws concerning marriage. Remember, he's the head of state. He's a king. He can do whatever he wants to do. So you think, that's why it's important to if you got power, use it wisely. Do the right thing with power. Just because you have power doesn't mean that you can't be knocked off your high horse. Just because you have the ability to control someone, so to speak, you better make sure you're doing the right thing. Okay, so he's probably thinking he's the head of state. He can do whatever he wants to, blah, blah, blah. And when Shelah was all grown up, he didn't allow Tamar to marry him, or he to marry Tamar as he promised. So in all actuality, Tamar is truly alone. She has no inheritance, 2 dead husbands, no child to take care of as she ages, and a deceptive father-in-law who holds her future within his power. All right, let's look at page 36. We're at the 3rd paragraph, and it says, Tamar, you see it, took matters into her own hands. She took matters into her own hands. She would have a child with her father-in-law. Somebody is probably saying, ugh. Tamar is saying, heir. So anyway, Tamar disguised herself and went to a location where Judah would see her. Judah failed to recognize her and considered her to be a prostitute. And before they had intercourse, she requested from him a pledge to confirm his promised payment. He had a promised payment. After he provided these things, Tamar became pregnant by him. Okay, so the Bible sheds light on what transpired prior. So what had happened was Judah's wife, Shua, died. The mother of his 3 sons, she died. And so he was going through a period of grief. And so he and his friend Hira went up to Timnath to shear some sheep. And when word got to Tamar that her father-in-law was in town, says she took off her widow's clothes. They did have widow's clothes. History talks about the widow had to wear some type of garment where she was pretty much, everybody knew that she was a widow. So she took off her widow's clothes and wrapped herself in a veil and sat in an open place. Union Avenue. How about that? She sat in an open place. Now who will go down Union Avenue? You sitting on Union Avenue, somebody see you. And they not think, if you especially in a place where where known prostitution is and different things like that, somebody would probably question it. Anyway, she sat in an open place in a street leading to Timnath. And when Judah saw her, he thought that she was a prostitute because she covered her face with a veil and because she was sitting in an open place. She was sitting on Union Avenue. He thought she was a prostitute. She knew him, but he didn't know her. All right, how we doing so far? Somebody say something. Somebody chat. Somebody say something. He knew her. She knew him rather, but he didn't know her. All right, so I'm still talking. So then Judah, all right, let me back up a little bit. She knew him and he didn't know her. So how many of you know that you have to plan to get out of some situation? You have to plan sometime to get out of some situations. You have to plan to get out of poverty, plan to get out of debt, plan to go to college, plan to graduate. Some things you have to plan to do. She had a plan. She had a plan. Somebody type in the chat, Tamar had a plan. You have to plan to get out of toxic relationships, toxic environments, unhealthy situations. You have to plan your escape. All right. She had a plan. All right. Somebody type it in the chat. I don't see your chat. Tamar had a plan. All right. Judah asked her, let me sleep with you. Let me sleep with you. Let me have my way with you tonight. I don't know how he said it in Shoot him out time. Come on, Tamar. He didn't know it was Tamar, but he was like, hey, let me sleep with you tonight. And so she says, and the Bible said, let me just tell you how the Bible said it. He said, go, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. He said, come on, let me just come in. Let me come in. And I'm like, Tamar probably would say, well, look, sir, the only way you getting into this space is you got to have something. You got to give me more than a 3-minute thrill. Come on now. You got to give me more than a 3-minute thrill. Somebody said the Lord causes our plans to succeed. He's into planning. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. So Tamar is like, you know what? You want to come in, but before I let you in, I got some stipulations to this right here. I got some stipulations. Well, sir, you're not getting into this place. It's going to be more than a 3-minute thrill. And so look what he had. Look what he offered her. He said he promised her a kid, not a baby. He promised her a goat. A goat. Again, it's like, at least I'll give her something she can live off of. She can kill the goat and, she'll have something to live off of. I'll give you a goat from my flock. Tamar was smart. She was futuristic. She was innovative. She was an original. I said she was an OG. She was an original. She came up with an original thing. Said, no, you ain't going to have, you're going to have to give me something of value. You're going to have to give me something of worth. You're going to have to make this worth my while. You're going to have to make it worth my while. Until you send me the goat, okay, you promised me a goat, but you're going to have to leave something here until you send me what you promised me. And so he asked her, what shall I leave you? What do you want me to give you? What do you want me to give you? Tamar, I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked. I need your signet ring. I need that ring, that only you got. You got the signet on it. I need the signet ring. I need your bracelets. I need your staff. Look, she's stripping him. And he don't know it. It's just like, I just want to get in for 3 minutes. 3 minutes, however long it take. That's what I want. But Tamar had a plan. Come on, but God had the plan. Tamar was acting it out. Tamar has a plan. All right, so she got everything that she asked for. Come on, Tamar probably said, come on, I told you, God don't play about me. Come on, tell somebody, God don't play about me. He loves me. He's concerned about you. All right. Anyway, God orchestrated the plot and the scenes were acted out just as he has planned. His plan would come to fruition even through all the scandal of Jacob's family. We must still remember that Judah is called, Jacob's family is called Abraham. It's all through the lineage of Abraham. Judah was called. God knew what he was going to do before he did it. Yet the call was upon his life. And I'm so glad that God doesn't renege because we make mistakes. He understands how frail we are. How many times have you made a mistake? Even with your saved, sanctified self, you've done some things that could have wiped you off or wiped you out of the book. How about that? But the Lord called you in spite of yourself. And so here we are. I believe that Tamar was not privy to all that God had in store for Abraham's family. Not even Abraham himself, because Abraham, he believed God when God told him that I'm going to make you the father of many nations. He didn't know what all that entailed. He just believed God. All right. So Tamar, she's not privy to what's in store for Abraham's family. But what she did know is that I'm just not going to be sitting out here in the open, and I'm just not going to sleep with any man that turns my way. I'm targeting one named Judah. That's the one I'm targeting. And I'm not just targeting him to say that that's my baby daddy. That ain't what I'm targeting him for, just for that. But I'm targeting this man because this man holds the key to my future. He holds the key to my longevity. He holds the key to my well-being. I don't want his money. She didn't just want him for his money, for his wealth, for the sake of riding around in the Tesla chariot of those days. She didn't want him for that. She wanted to be an heir, just to have an heir to be in the family. She didn't know what all it would entail. Not only would Judah become the founder of the tribe of Judah, an ancestor to King David and to the Messiah, Jesus Christ, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, would come through the lineage of Judah. It was bigger than Tamar. It was bigger than just her just wanting a baby. It was bigger. It was an inheritance. It was an inheritance. Judah would be called a lion. And then we know later on, Jesus would be called the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Tamar would be set for life even after her death. Her descendants would be royal. It was bigger than just saying, I got a baby. No, it was more than that. Text in the chat that God had a plan. Somebody was already saying it about God had a plan, but put it in there. God had a plan. God had a plan. God has plans for our life. He had plans for Tamar's life. He has plans for our life. Jeremiah 29:11 says it well. It says, "For I know the plans that I have for you." Different translation, but that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to what? Prosper you. Plans to prosper you. To prosper you and not to harm you. I'm not here to destroy you. I got plans to prosper you, to make you wealthy. I got plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Plans to give you hope. And what else? Plans to give you a future. Tamar was thinking about her future. Remember, widows didn't have inheritance rights. If they didn't have any children, they had no one to even take care of them. And so Tamar was thinking about her future, her future. All right, let's get to number 3, Tamar's situation. This is still on page 36. Tamar's situation, verse 24. It says, "And it came to pass about 3 months after that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar, thy daughter-in-law, played the harlot, and also, behold, she is with a child by whoredom." What you say? I sent her home with her father. She is not to be messing around. She got to wait until my son Sheila is grown. And I've already decided I'm not going to give her my son. But how in the world is she pregnant? She ain't supposed to leave the house. I got rule over her. I got authority over her. But it was told that your daughter-in-law has played the hoe and she is pregnant. Did I say that? She played the whore and she is pregnant. This is what's been happened. Okay, so Tamar got a situation. Anybody got a situation? Ever been in a situation? Have been in some situations? You got into them. You know how you get out of them. You know how to get out of them. Tamar got in a situation that she had a plan on getting out of. She had the whole plan. I'm gonna get into it, and I'm gonna get out. All right. So here we go. Let's go a little further. Well, what had happened was Judah sent a friend to go get his stuff back. At this about after 3 months has passed. So think about it now. Judah sends a friend, go find the prostitute and go get my stuff back. Go get my ring, go get my staff, and go get my bracelets. Now, I'd have been with a harlot. I mean, this could be a big shame for me. I'm the king. I'm the man in leadership. This is gonna be shame. You know that I didn't been down here supposed to be shearing the sheep, and I didn't went somewhere else, you know? And so here we are. I need my stuff back. I need my signet ring. I need my bracelet. And I need my staff. So he sends a friend to find the prostitute. Goes to find her. Can't find her. Nobody even has record of her. We ain't no prostitute out here. No prostitute sits here. It ain't prostitution. They don't go around here. It's not in this area. And so here he is, not knowing where his stuff is at. Okay. So then 3 months pass before Judah would discover her identity. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and read it. Tamar's situation, okay, 24a. It said, "And it came to pass about 3 months after that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar, thy daughter-in-law, has played the harlot, and also, behold, she is with child by whoredom." All right, Judah had sent a friend. I already kind of told it, but I'll read it again. Judah had sent a friend to take back his pledge, but the woman could not be found. 3 months would pass before Judah would discover her identity. Though Tamar lived in her father's household, Judah still claimed her as part of his family. As long as his third son was alive, Judah would take an interest in her well-being, even if it was from a distance. Since she was widowed and lived in her father's house, there was no way she could be with child except through immorality. That's what they thought. No way. All right, let's go to 24b. And Judah said, "Bring her forth." Now, here he is now, sitting in this king seat. "Bring her here. Bring her here and let her be burnt." I said, man, they did the women cold. and still try to do us cold as we the weaker sex. Now, how you gonna burn her? What about the man? You know what I'm saying? She could have sat out there all day long and never had no business if the man hadn't stopped by. But no, bring her here and let her be burnt. In one of the commentary, which I really like, I already said the IVP commentary of the Old Testament, it talks about prostitution, how normally the typical punishment for a prostitute was stoning to death. And usually to go to this extent, it was usually it had to be like a priest's daughter who was caught in prostitution and maybe in or in incest. So Tamar is given the harshest of this cruel act. Let her be burned. Now, Judah's judgment, you'll read it, Judah's judgment was striking and it was harsh. The law of Moses did not exist at that time. It was later prescribed being burnt as a form of punishment. Okay, so Judah's declaration highlighted the horrific irony of the situation. He demanded capital punishment. He demanded capital punishment for his daughter-in-law because of her presumed prostitution. However, he was the one who had impregnated Tamar. Come on now, he the one did it. He ain't thought nothing about himself. Not one time did he probably think about himself. Now look, I was out there finding a prostitute. I was out there with one. Even though he didn't know it was Tamar, he still was out there doing something that would have brought shame to him. Yet and still, he never brought up about how he must have felt. But no, bring her. Reminds me of the woman that was taken in adultery. Remember? She was taken in adultery. She didn't do that act by herself. But yet they brought her to Jesus. Look, Jesus, she was taken in adultery. Well, who seen her? Who was there? Who knew about it? It had to be one of the men in the midst that was talking about, here, kill her, stone her. Well, what about you? Didn't happen like that. But Jesus, the Bible talks about the woman being left alone with Jesus. That's what you need. So just a alone time with the Lord. Lord, thank you for not letting folks stone me to death, not letting this thing take me out, whatever it was, whatever it be, whatever's in your life. Thank God that it didn't take you out. You didn't lose your mind in it. Anyway, Judah is saying, bring her here. He's the one that impregnated her. It says, further, Judah might have considered Tamar's act to be one of unfaithfulness to his son Shelah, who was still next in line to be given as her husband. He was still next in line, but he reneged on that. All right, so let's go to what do you think? How can people respond fairly in good time to an unjust situation? How can people respond fairly and in good time to an unjust situation? Anybody got an answer for that, for anything? How can people respond fairly? Well, I'm thinking about, I can just kind of get it started. Think about what happened to George Floyd and the many other ones that have that we've seen these different events unfold right before our eyes, of Black men, Black women, and not just Black women, but the majority Black men, Black women, people of color being killed, different things like that. So what we can do in unjust situations is we advocate for it. We advocate against it. We speak out. We be a part of change. Get out and vote. I have to always throw it in. I'm an advocate for voting. And things don't change. And people, you got really go vote. And that would determine who's representing you at the state level, the White House, different places like that. And believe you me, if you say, well, it's not going to matter. Well, you got to think like Tamar. It's going to matter for my descendants. If God lay his... All right, is somebody saying something? All right, anybody got a comment? All right. So anybody else? So I'm just thinking about how you can respond is by being advocates and speak up, speak out sometime about things that you know that are unjust. All right, I'm giving it a few minutes. Anybody want to type in the comments, anything? All right, so digging a little deeper. How would your response differ if you or someone you loved was experiencing the unjust situation? What would you do? What would you do if it was your family, one of your family members that was experiencing something that was unjust? Again, anybody else? You have to be advocates for your family too at times. You have to speak up for your family. And if you think that all you have to do is pray about it, that's part of it. It was at one point, some of them, the Lord told them that it was time to get off their knees. They hadn't prayed enough. Get off your knees and get busy. Go do it. Somebody said, I would protest. Right, you would protest. You would stand up for them. This was wrong. This is wrong. And so, all right. Okay, so we just move on a little bit long. How we got? Okay, we're doing pretty good. Okay, so we got all this that happened. All right. Now with B, verse 25, Tamar's revelation. Tamar's revelation. She says, when she was brought forth, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, by the man whose these are, am I with child? So she had a plan. She didn't just ask him. She didn't ask him for a pair of sandals, his sandals. She didn't ask him, oh, let me have a rag on top of your head. No, she said, let me have your signet ring, your staff, and your bracelets. Bracelets were engraved with his name on. That's what history say. Usually bracelets, different things like that had the name of the owner on there. She's smart. I told you she's futuristic. She was innovative. All right. So she said, I'm with child, she said. Discern, I pray thee. Discern, I pray thee. I wish I would have been thinking, whose bracelet is this? Whose bracelet is this? Whose signet ring is this? Is this your staff? Whose is it? All right. Tamar did not have to state publicly the extent of Judah's involvement. She didn't have to tell nobody nothing after that. She didn't have to tell them where she was at. She didn't have to tell them what took place. She just said, look, here's his staff, the signet ring, and his bracelets. Instead, she forced her father-in-law to confront his hypocrisy. Did I tell you Tamar had a plan? She forced him to confront his hypocrisy and consider how he failed to provide for her. Now, Tamar had no need to state the obvious. She had no need to say, look, I'm pregnant by Judah did it. Judah did it. She didn't have to do it. She just, here it is. The staff, the bracelet, and the signet ring. Okay. And so the personal items left behind would reveal the man who caused her to be with child. A signet was an engraved stone that would leave a unique imprint when pressed on a surface. Signets were worn as rings or could have been on bracelets or chains around Jacob's neck. A staff was a necessary tool when working with herds. A staff's owner would sometimes be identified by an inscription on it. Tamar's shrewdness. She was shrewd. You ain't gonna get to lay with me and have a 3-minute thrill and think that's all it's gonna be. That ain't happening. As my friend used to say, that ain't happening, Captain. That ain't happening, Captain. Okay, so Tamar's shrewdness revealed her intentions. She had requested and retained these items. Listen here. She requested and retained these items, not because of their financial value. She went after the money. It wasn't because of the financial value, but because of their identifying capabilities. It's going to identify him. This is going to prove that you was really here. Gonna really prove that you were really here. All right, Tamar's righteousness. Go to to number C. And Judah acknowledged them and said, she hath been more righteous. Now we're in the part where we get to be humble. She has been more righteous than I have, because I gave her not my son Shelah, and he knew her not again. He knew her no more. He didn't have no more dealings with her again, no more sexual encounters with her again. It is here that he is brought to a level of repentance. I feel, look, it was me. I did this. She was more righteous than I was. I was going to leave her with no one to care for her. I was going to leave her without an inheritance. I was going to leave her, or leave my son, that firstborn, without an heir. I was going to leave it, Sister Lucky talked about earlier this month, last month, she talks about in our financial health class or wealth class, she talks about leaving a will and leaving a legacy. The Bible talks about leaving an inheritance to your children's children, an inheritance. She spoke about how she got her will together, or her trust, the living trust together, that even her dogs, if they're still alive, would go to her grandchildren. So you write on. I mean, you you govern where you want things to go while you're alive, because you're not going to be coming back from the grave telling nobody what you're going to be doing. I don't care what you say. You ain't coming back to tell your child, now I want you to pay that bill, and I want to make sure that's taken care of. You got to do it before you leave here, right? Tamar had a plan. All right, so Judah is like, I've done wrong. She's more righteous than I am. Okay, and so the revealing of the personal items would have brought great shame on Judah. To his credit, he acknowledged the items and their implications regarding his own failures. This is where he steps up into this role of leadership. This is like Queen Elizabeth. They talked about she lived above reproach. The things that happened in her family, just thinking about her son, tell me what his name is, Prince Andrew. Mm-hmm. All the stuff that he was involved with tell me his name again, this one that... Not no Andrew, but the different sexual scandals and that he was involved with. Somebody type it in the name. The one type it in the chat. The man that got in trouble, he ended up committing suicide. Epstein. Okay, Epstein named all things that was happening with him. The queen took it upon herself to demote him from the military. He if you notice, he is not wearing a military outfit. He's not wearing that. She demoted him. She took him from that. Okay, she used that that she went ahead and, like, she didn't bow down to it. She rose above. Like, I'm gonna have to rule, even though it's my child. You got to do the right thing, even when it's your children. Even when it's yours, you have to do the right thing. You don't get away with wrong because you're my child. All right, and so Judah acknowledges his own failures, and whether because of his own shame or to hide his immoral act, Judah turned the discussion to Tamar. Jeffrey Epstein. Discussion to Tamar. His statement that she had been more righteous than I, it says, did not fully justify, relatively worse. He had acted unfaithfully and unjustly toward Tamar by preventing his son Shelah from marrying her. He failed to care for her, for his widowed daughter-in-law. Tamar was in right to want Judah to honor his obligations. She desired just treatment and forced Judah's hand so that she could receive it. But that doesn't mean that the end justified the means. That Judah knew Tamar again no more indicated that he had no further sexual relations with her. Tamar gave birth to sons, and you can find that in Genesis 38:29 through 30, who would continue the line of Judah. Look at that. Would continue the line of Judah. Both Judah and Tamar were counted in a later genealogy of Jesus. Look at here. Look at here, as Ella Bob would say. Look at here. Tamar was a part of the lineage She had a plan, but she didn't know probably how far she would go with that. How what significance, what great significance was in that and being heir. She's in the lineage of Jesus. She's in the lineage, Tamar and Judah both. Okay, what do you think? How should a person respond when confronted with their unrighteous or sinful decisions? How should a person respond? Better yet, how should you respond? How should I respond when confronted with an unrighteous, sinful decision? And we have to realize that even though you're saved, you are not, you are not, you are not above the law. We're not above the law. When we make a mistake, when we sin, we need to get that thing straight as soon as we can. Get it straight. Forgive me. I apologize. I was wrong. I was wrong. I was wrong. And the Lord will build you up. The Lord will build you up. All right. Anybody else want to respond to that? How should a person respond when confronted with their unrighteous or sinful decisions? Give somebody a minute. All right. The next thing is digging deeper. It says, how might confrontation differ when with believers? Or how might confrontation differ when with believers? How might confrontation differ when with believers? Confrontation. Somebody said, admit it, admit it and quit it. That's right. Admit it and quit it. Say, and keep going. Keep going. Just know that we're human, that that we make mistakes, that we don't always do the right thing. We don't always say the right things. Sometimes we find ourselves maybe in situations you just really don't know how you got there. How you got there. Don't know what made you think that, what made you do that thing. But admit it and quit it. All right. Somebody else say, all right. All right. So what time we got? We still have a few more minutes. I think we can finish this out. I think, let me see. 8:04. No. We're not gonna finish this out. So I'm gonna have to stop it. Anybody got any comments? I'm gonna have to finish finish the next one. Next week is financial wealth. So I have to finish it in the next 2 weeks. So this ought to be enough to keep you interested, to go back and read the story about what happened, to go back and read how that Tamar and Judah both in the lineage of Jesus Christ just came right on through King David, all just right through this lineage. God had a plan. God had a purpose for Judah. There was a reason why he chose Judah, not Reuben, not Benjamin. Sometimes the reason why God chose you, why he chose you, why he chose you. It's the reason why he chose you. You know good and well, some of you in positions you had no business being in. You ain't smart enough. I ain't smart enough to be in it. God places you in positions. Make the position right for you. Make your gifts make room for you. Your gifts will make room for you. That's what God does. All right. Anybody else before we kind of close out? All right.
I think Tamar was she did something that I didn't think she was proud of doing, but she had to do it. She was put in a position she had no choice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she had done lost two husbands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she had to survive, and the way she thought about it is the way to get uh, Judah back. You know.
Well, yeah, it was to have an heir.
Yeah.
To have an heir. It wasn't so much like I'm just going to get him back, but it was like, well, since he didn't give the son Sheila to her, which was supposed to be that way, like that, she was shrewd. I'm thinking of another way that I'm going to get him. She, who would have thought that? You know, who would it? I mean, for her to even play the role, they say it may not even been a prostitute, but it could have been a temple whore, not temple whore, temple prostitute. In that region or whatever. That's the role she may have played. Anyway, bottom line is most likely it was a prostitute. But yeah, she was smarter than him.
Smart.
She was smarter than him because she was looking at her future. She's looking at her future. Like, look, if I leave here without an heir, I'm in this family of royalty, but I'm wiped out if I don't have an heir. I have no rights as a widow. I have no rights as a widow. And so, yeah, she was shrewd in the way she thought, in the way she acted that out, and the way she required something of worth from him. Something that would just say, hey, you know what? It would corroborate her story. Because first of all, women second class, whatever, third class, whatever road class they want to put us in. She was like, nah, I'm gonna be the one in first class this time. I'm gonna get the goods. I'm gonna get the
things
goods.
he gave up.
Yeah. Was it? I mean, how sometimes I don't want to make it men and women. But sometimes brothers, you just don't be thinking straight. You just don't think straight. But anyway, whatever the case, Tamar won it. She won that one. She won that one.
Judge Judy be proud of her.
My husband said Judge Judy would be proud of her. A whole bunch of Judge Judys would be proud of her in that she stood up for a right that she should have been given. So here she is. She's advocating already for women's rights. Come on, Tamar. Go vote, y'all. It's coming up. All right. Anything else? Anybody else want to say anything? I'm not getting enough comments on here. I want to make sure that I got somebody with me.
You do.
I got you with me. I know my husband. I know my Boaz is over here to my left. My Will. He's with me. All right. So then what I'll do is I'll save the last part, which is Judah's ruler. Quite a bit, Judah's ruler, but we should finish it out in like the next 3 weeks, because I think, and maybe even longer, because Brother Thomas comes in. Brother Thomas will teach in the next week or so, 2 weeks. So I'm gonna get in where I fit in. You done pretty much got the meat of this lesson, but we'll finish it. We'll finish it when we get there. All right. Any other comments? All right. So I'm really glad that you all got a chance to join us tonight. The Vibrant City, Vibrant Sunday School, a Vibrant School, and we call it wellness too, but our Vibrant School tonight, and our lesson being Judah, the scepter given to Judah. The scepter given to Judah. All right. God bless you. God bless you. And remember, the Vibrant City Church, we aim to love you to life. God bless you. Have a good night and a wonderful, wonderful weekend.